Hello, so today we're going to go over one of the strongest comps in the game right now, which is actually Graves Reroll. This is one of the most stable and strongest of the different reroll lines. So what I'm going to do a little bit of a guide intro where I'm going to talk about the comp, some of the things that you want for success, items, units, things like that, synergies, and then we're going to go back and we're going to actually watch me play through a Graves game where I, start out with the Graves and go through the whole shebang of what I do every single round, how I kind of stabilize when I roll, things like that. If you like my content, please make sure to like and subscribe. Normally, I do guides that just talk about, things you play on the patch, different aspects of set 14, set mechanics, things like that. If you like that style of content, please make sure to like and subscribe. Of course, I'm also doing a lot more VOD reviews right now because as people are trying to rank up, I think it's a really good resource, especially towards the end of the set. And I'm trying to merge with some of the how to play guides. I have a playlist on how to play certain comps for some of the specific comps that maybe reach a little bit outside of how to play certain trait. I'm doing these VOD reviews with a little bit of a tutorial built in. So if you like that, make sure to like and subscribe as well. So now, let's quickly talk about this comp for a few minutes, and then we're going to go watch the VOD and talk through step by step how I kind of play it in a more practical sense. So first of all, the way this comp works is that you are playing around Graves Reroll. So Graves is extremely powerful. He basically just has this ability where he just pumps out damage constantly. He has a passive and an active, so he doesn't really have a mana generation where he's casting an ult in a traditional sense. It's basically 2 auto attacks and then he casts always, which is really powerful and really cool and makes him have some weird interactions, which we'll talk about afterwards as well. When you think about Graves, one of the best items for Graves for this reason is QSS. So a lot of times QSS is one of the priority items. When you're thinking about a unit that just wants to auto attack a bunch, and Graves gets a lot of value off auto attacking, he also fires 5 projectiles as his passive, so he has good spread damage as well. QSS works really nicely because it's going to give you a lot of starting attack speed, and it also makes you unable to be stunned. So if you think about those Sejuani boards and Exotech and all sorts of crazy lines, it makes it really hard for this Graves to be interrupted, and he has constant uptime of just pumping out damage. So QSS, really good choice there. It also has good synergy with his traits, which we'll talk about afterwards as well when we go over the traits. After QSS, a really good item is Sterix. Sterix after the rework became really strong and it's one of the best items on melee style carries. Basically the way Sterix works is it gives you a bunch of base AD and it gives you some extra HP, and then also at 60% health it kind of gives you a quote unquote second lease at life by giving you a health shield, which basically can allow you to kind of heal up and not necessarily die instantly, which is really important to Graves because part of his ability is that he dashes around and dashes through enemies. So for example, if I'm going for a full board here, Graves has a 2 hex range. Let's just put a random frontline unit. I'll take Galio for example. If Graves is targeting the Galio, right, and the Galio's here, what's going to happen is when Graves does his cast, he's going to dash next to the target, which will usually end him up somewhere behind or on enemy line, so to speak, which can make him a very big target, especially if there's a backline carry that has to re-aggro. They're going to all toggle aggro onto the Graves. So you really want to have something that gives him some level of survivability, which is why Sterix works really well. Last item, I think you can debate which one is best, but usually you just want Omnivamp, so it's going to be Bloodthirster in my opinion, just because the health shield also is almost like a third lease on life. This Graves unit, the only way you don't win the round is if he just runs into the backline and dies instantly. That's the biggest issue with the comp, I would say. But if you want good synergies and good building of item components, a Hodge also works nicely just because Graves is an Executioner. So Executioners, if you have the trait active, their ults are going to critically strike. So if their ult is critically striking, you want to bring up that critical strike chance to kind of just make it more consistent as a certain level of damage output. So if you pair it with a lot of crit glove items, so QSS working in the same regard, and pair it with a Hodge, you're now raising that critical strike chance, which makes it a little bit easier for you to get those critical strike ults, which in turn could be a large damage boost. However, for survivability's sake, I think in most cases, the Bloodthirster is a good choice. I'm just trying to give you options. When you're playing this comp, it might... Oops, I cleared the whole board. My apologies. Let's just put Graves back in there. When you're playing this comp, a lot of times when you're building up the synergies, this comp works really well because it's a reroll that plays around Golden Ox. So Golden Ox, as you use rolls, will efficiently give you a lot of damage amp. So Graves in particular, you know, if you build them with giving him some base AD, you know, think about your Sterix, which gives some base AD, and your Bloodthirsters and your other items, those help out a lot because you're going to get a lot of damage amp from Golden Ox. So a lot of times when you're playing the comp, you're actually going to reroll with fellow Golden Ox units that are going to be really effective. So a lot of times you're trying to rush to get to 4 Golden Ox, and you usually play 4 Golden Ox as soon as you have it. You get a large bump in damage amp, and then you also get a lot of gold, which helps you to hit. And then if you have the gold to hit your board, you can also push levels, and if you have all that gold to do all that crazy stuff, you'll also be able to get your Golden Ox procs, which every turn will slowly escalate and give you more and more damage amp. So really essential and just really good synergies, because you basically just give them base AD in multiple ways. You have Executioner, which gives them built-in crit, and then you just scale up damage amp, and this unit absolutely melts everybody. When you're building out the rest of the board, something that helps out a lot is playing Divinicorp. Whenever you're playing around melee carries, it's common to play traits like Divinicorp because they just give a lot of survivability and a lot of stats that can actually help out your units quite a bit. So Vex is an Executioner of choice that you can use to give the Executioner trait and also gives crit chance, but units like Senna gives base AD. We already talked about how Graves wants some base AD because he has a lot of damage amp and a lot of crit chance and stuff like that. So the way to scale up his damage is actually giving him a bunch of base AD because he's going to get the other means of scaling through his synergies, which is really helpful. And then additionally, having Rost and Gragas actually has good synergies with the other Golden Ox units of Bruiser and Vanguard, so it helps them to be a little bit more frontline tanky, but it also gives you extra armor and extra HP. And because Graves is a melee user, a melee unit, he's diving into the backline, that adds to his survivability. Giving him armor and HP is going to make him survive a little bit longer, so a lot of times this is the quote-unquote go-to board. You can often swap out Aphelios for somebody else if you don't have Aphelios items, and I think out of everything here, you know, this is obviously 7 units. You usually drop the Vex and you play the Vex later, right? You usually want to have Golden Ox and Divinicorp in earlier because the Executioner, while it is one of Graves' traits and it does scale up his damage, is not super essential because he basically does a lot of his damage through his auto attacks anyways. So like, you know, you're fine. He could still pump out a lot of damage, so you usually delay putting the Vex on until later. The way to actually cap out this board and play for a top 4 a lot of the times is actually, however, to go for a couple other 3 costs, right? You usually go for Jarvan 3-star and you go for Senna 3-star. Senna 3-star becomes your late game way of stabilizing your damage, so you're just not all dependent on this Graves. In some cases, if you have good Aphelios items, Aphelios can also become a really strong carry in place of Senna 3 if you don't have Senna 3. But Jarvan is almost essential because you want to have at least somebody 3-star in the front line so that the Graves doesn't get like toggled instantly, right? If your front line collapses too fast, then people are going to target Graves and he's just going to die instantly, and then the round's over and the board is done, which makes this comp a little bit risky. It's very broken, don't get me wrong. It's very strong, and I think a lot of people just instantly play it and have a lot of success, but there's a lot of times where it's overplayed and you're really strong in your early game because Graves is really strong in your mid game because Graves is really strong, and then late game you don't hit Jarvan 3, you don't hit Senna 3, and all of a sudden you're randomly bought 4, and it feels like, how did I just lose instantly? And a lot of times it's just that like the Graves isn't enough. The Graves can get overwhelmed and you can sometimes just lose out, and also like Golden Ox managing could be a little bit difficult in times like those. But we're gonna go through to the actual game now. I kind of spent, like I said, the first couple minutes talking about. We'll try and speed through some of the rounds. I'll talk about the benefits of the comp and some of the sore points of the comp and how to cap out the comp in a really good way, actually going through a VOD here. So this is a game where I'm playing Graves. I'm not necessarily committed to Graves. This is still stage 1. Originally, I just was trying to play around playing tempo, but it turned out that Graves was uncontested and I ended up hitting a couple copies, so I ended up playing it. So as you can see here, you know, starting the game out, I don't think I have a particularly good spot because I don't have a good set of items on my bench that I can just like make 100 things, but I do have a Graves and I have cloning facility. So if you guys don't know, cloning facility is really strong, especially if you have a good unit to duplicate. Graves already on stage 2 and stage 3, even as a 1-star, just pumps out an insane amount of damage. So with cloning facility, you just get a duplicate version of that. You can actually do insane work on those early game rounds. So cloning facility, I'm thinking I'll just take it. Whether I streak or whether I don't, I'll definitely be relatively strong during this stage, which was the main idea that I had going into this game. And that's kind of how it started. Now, eventually, you know, I see this guy's maybe 2-cost rerolling. I see that there's an amp player that might be rerolling or holding on to amp units. There's a lot of people that are playing around 2 costs in this lobby, which starts to give me like the alarm bells of, maybe I can actually play around Graves this game. We'll see. It's also gold sub, which means I'm going to have some extra resources. That actually helps me with my whole golden ox and everything else. But as you can see, I'm just trying to play around a strong board in my early game and hoping that that's going to translate into some sort of strength in my late game. 1 second. I just have to reset my my inking because I don't think it's showing up for you guys. Okay, now we should see some red pen. All right, perfect. All right. So let's go through it. So as you can see, I'm just going to steamroll a little bit. We're going to skip a little bit of stage 2 because I did the intro trying to explain the comp and talk about some of the aspects, different aspects of it. There's a couple other nuances which I'll talk towards the end of the video if we have some time at the end. But as you can see, Graves, you know, I think everybody has this experience at least once in their game. You know, Graves on stage 2, especially if you have items for him or Graves 2, he's going to pump out a lot of damage, right? Almost all of these rounds, I'm just winning easily, especially with the 2 Graves. That's why I took cloning facility in the first place, because the idea was no matter what I'm playing with my items, I can probably streak pretty easily because I have these 2 Graves in this early game. And then what happens is I look around, there's a lot of 2-cost players. I actually found a second copy of a Graves, so it's like I'm Graves paired. I just decide to commit to Graves because, you know, I was able to get sword on carousel. So, you know, if you look at my bench, I'm like half Hodge, half QSS. I just need a couple gloves. I have Sterix and I'm win streaking. So I feel pretty confident that, hey, I can just play I could probably just play Graves this game and just take it as like maybe like a kind of secure top 4 because my spot seems pretty good. And there's other people that are holding on to multiple 2 costs. So it's going to be a little bit easier for me to hit this because, you know, if they buy all the other 2 costs, I'm less likely to see those ones in my shop. So then I'm going to have a better chance hitting the Graves, which will make it a little bit easier for me to stay with high tempo in the lobby. So we're going to skip a little bit. Probably until next augment because nothing really changes here. I'm just particularly strong. I make QSS. I'm holding on to Hodge, the tier, excuse me, to make Hodge because I just want to make some sort of Omnivamp item on my Graves. And I'm probably going to start rolling a little bit. I take team building here because I know that I'm going to try and hit multiple 3 stars. So I think it's just a good use of a silver augment. So that's just fine there. We're going to level and we're going to roll a little bit here. Ideally, I want to roll until I hit at least a Graves 2 just to stabilize and continue win streaking. However, I did lose the first round to another person re-rolling, so I'm not too worried about rolling deep. But this is a common thing, right? Just at the start of the round, augments, this is usually where a lot of people stabilize, especially if they're playing reroll. So I'm just going to roll until I hit Graves 2. It benefits me a lot, and then I can put my Graves in here. Now, one thing, we're going to take a small interlude away from this and go back to the guide part. So I just want to mention a couple things. So in terms of positioning, when you're positioning with this board, a lot of times you will see positioning that looks something like this. You'll make like a little clump of units on this side. Usually it's your 3-star front line and your Graves. And then you'll clump your other units on the other side. And you'll kind of make a weird positioning that looks kind of like this. The reason that you do this is because this Graves unit is really good at wrapping the back line because of his 2 range and his ability to dash through enemies. So for example, let's say I take this line and there's an exploitable weakness on the opponent's side like this Mordekaiser, right? What will happen is the Graves will target the Mordekaiser on this side, will dash through the Mordekaiser, kill the Mordekaiser, and then a lot of the times, I don't know if he's bugged or not, but this is very common. Excuse me, I also have to lower the volume level here a little bit because that song's a little bit loud. But anyways, what happens a lot of the time is that Graves will actually go towards a backline unit and just target them to kill them. And that just like instantly can sway the fight into your favor, like just instantly, right? Like if you imagine here, let's just redo it, right? I'll re-put in the Mordekaiser just to explain this example a little bit better. So like, let's say you're positioned like this, Graves is going to target Mordekaiser, right? Let's say your Sejuani somewhere over here, and maybe she like goes towards this side, right? Graves will dash through, kill the Mordekaiser. Then even if the Sejuani's over here, it's like a 50-50 on if he targets the front line or the back line. And I'm gonna be honest, I think he's bugged because I have never seen him take this 50-50 and target the front line. But maybe it's just because like maybe I'm just unlucky or something. I'm not gonna say it's actually bugged without like proper proof or anything, but like there's a good chance, even if you're talking 50-50, that he just turns around and instantly deletes your backline carry, right? He just goes here and the round's over, right? The game is done. The round is over, right? So if you're playing against a Graves, you're trying desperately to be on the opposite side of wherever the Graves is with your carry, right? You're trying to position your main carry somewhere over here so that even if he dashes the back line, he's not killing your main carry instantly. Now, if you notice in this game that I'm playing, my Graves isn't positioned as such. My Graves is positioned here. And the reason is that I have cloning facility, and I think that having 2 copies of the Graves, at least right now, is going to be a little bit stronger. Of course, wrapping the back line can instantly win me a fight, but I think 2 copies of Graves 2, if you look at the damage output, they do almost as much damage as each other. They do massive amounts of damage. So I'm totally down for just 2 copies of Graves to try and win the fight that way. See, if you look at the damage report on the side here, this is why, right? Like, instead of getting the wrap, I'm just saying to myself, I can make a second copy of Graves, which is going to do almost as much damage as my first copy of Graves. I think that's totally valid and totally fine. Now, towards the end of the game, you're going to notice that I'm going to swap out that Graves. I'm not going to duplicate the Graves all the time because, much later in the game, where it's essential that I kill a backline carry, then I'm going to want to duplicate somebody else, maybe like a frontline unit, and I'll just have the Graves, jump the backline with the positioning that I just showed you. But we can skip some of this stage as well. But what you'll notice is I'm trying to balance holding my econ and then rolling for golden ox. So usually you want to roll on level 6. If you're particularly high roll, you can roll on level 7. If you roll on level 7, you're basically just saying that I can hit this Graves a little bit later, and I'm also going to hit Senna 3, and I'm also going to hit Jarvan 3. The problem right now is that I don't have that many copies of Graves, obviously, like I'm level 650 gold, and it's towards the end of stage 3. I also don't have any copies of Jarvan yet, so I really don't feel comfortable just going to 7 to roll for Jarvan, because I might never hit Jarvan 3 anyways, because I'm really behind on that. A lot of times you usually hit a Jarvan by this time, especially since it's gold sub, but I just haven't hit anything yet. So instead, I'm just going to roll a lot on level 7. Maybe I'll roll a lot on level 6, and I'll only maybe level to 7 once I have a lot of copies of Graves, maybe like 6 or 7, and then I'll commit. This guy's particularly high, really has like an Urgon on level 7, so who knows what's going on here. But as you can see, it's okay to break econ intervals when you're rolling for Golden Ox. There's another condition for this comp, and this is one that goes a little bit left unread sometimes, and that's that you want to get to around 50. You want to get this Golden Ox stack to above 50. The way Golden Ox works is that if you spend a certain amount of gold, it's cut in half if you're re-rolling. But if you spend a certain amount of gold, this number will go up and then it'll reach a new threshold. And that threshold keeps climbing. And this is what gives you the bonus damage amp from the Golden Ox trait. The big problem is that if this number doesn't get high enough, you don't reach critical mass and this Grave falls off a cliff. Late game, like, stage 4, stage 5, stage 6, this Graves is fucking useless if you don't have high Golden Ox stacks. I swear, it's a true thing. So what you have to do is you kind of have to balance when you're rolling for gold. You don't want to drop too low on econ because then you won't be able to hit your board, you won't be able to level, you won't be able to do anything. So a lot of times what I recommend is that if you can stay above 40 gold, then I would roll to gather my units and proc the Golden Ox. And that usually gives you a good tempo of like you're either getting a Golden Ox proc every single turn or at minimum every other turn. That's like a good cadence, I think, just because you want to make it to 50. You want to make it to above 50. 50 is like, it's not a perfect number. I can't tell you for sure that that's the number that you win out with. But in my experience, like around 50 is critical mass, where you are at a point where you're actually going to start winning out and doing stuff. Also, you'll notice I made Hodge. It was just the healing item. I'm too far away from making a Bloodthirster. I don't have a cloak. I don't have a sword. So I just make the Hand of Justice just to give my Graves some healing. So hopefully he's going to be fine for some of these later game fights. But anyways, as you can see, I'm proccing it so long as I'm staying above 40 gold. So I'm kind of like going in between, if I can stay above 40. Sometimes if I can stay above 30, you just don't want to drop your econ too low, because if you don't make the interest here and you're not making your Golden Ox procs, you run into a spot where you're going to be like 0 gold, no Graves, no Jarvans, no board, no life, everything's done, no LP, right? It's just going to be horrible. So, keep your money up. Stay above 40 is my recommendation. If things start to get really stressful, you can start dropping a little bit lower, try and win out, make it to 50 at a certain stage. So we can pay attention to this number, and you'll see that's how I'm kind of managing it. I think you can either be too trigger happy, where you're just rolling every turn for Golden Ox, then you grief your econ to a point where it's irredeemable and you just never hit your units, or you don't roll enough, you save your econ, you greed, and then the game's over because you have Graves 3, you have Jarvan 3, you have Senna 3, but you don't have the damage output because you're missing too many Golden Ox stacks because you waited and you rolled all in one turn because you needed to roll at a certain point and you over-greeded your econ. But a good note is that especially if you can hit 4 Golden Ox, you get a lot of the gold back in a round. So even if you make it to like 40 gold and not 50 gold, or even 30 gold, you can often cash out enough gold to remake those econ intervals just by the Golden Ox procs, which is really nice. Here, I'm going to start building some items for my other units. Ideally, I want to have 3 items on Senna and 3 items on Jarvan. So my goal here is some utility items on Senna. Senna has a little bit of spread damage, which is really nice. And in the late game, you can go for even more damage on Senna, and that's totally valid, totally fine. So here, as you can see, I'm going to roll a little bit. I'm like I said, because I'm not very close to like Jarvan Senna 3, I'm going to roll on level 6 until I hit this Graves 3. And then once I hit Graves 3, then I'll push level to 7, and then I'm probably going to spend the rest of my game on level 7, just staying with like one of the boards, and then hopefully make it to level 8 at one point just to complete my board in terms of its synergies. But so far so good. We found an Aphelios. Aphelios is hard to fit in on level 6. So I'm going to roll pretty aggressively next turn maybe, even like, you know, dismissing Golden Ox and rolling a little bit deeper than Golden Ox, just to make sure that I can fit in Aphelios and get 4 Golden Ox. It's going to be a huge power spike, so I want to hit like, you know, Graves 3, Aphelios, Graves 3 and level for Aphelios, hopefully next turn, if not within the next turn or 2. I'm a little bit far from Graves, but you have to understand I have 2 duplicators coming. That's why I took that silver augment, and we called it a day. In terms of augment selection here, I'm looking for anything that gives me some good combat. I don't really like health as wealth that much because it's gold sub. So it's kind of nice, but it's not that useful. Like, I don't need the extra gold here and here. So I'd rather just take double combat. Stand United is pretty good with this comp. I want base stats. Remember what we were talking about with Graves? He has crit. He has damage amp. You really want base stats. That's going to help you out a lot. And then corrosion can't hurt. Like, with this comp, especially if you had Jarvan 3, it can stall for pretty long, so you can get good value off corrosion as well. So I'm kind of down to just, like, you know, take the double combat here, and I think it's going to be a little bit better. But yeah, as you can see, I'm going to roll. I rolled until I hit. Now I have Graves 3. We're good to go. So for the next little while, until I have like a really reliable other unit to duplicate, I'm not going to be positioning to wrap with the Graves, just because I think the double Graves 3 is going to pump out enough damage that I feel pretty comfortable. My Graves does have some survivability issues if I ever fight a board that has like heavy burst damage. You saw it last turn with like the Mundo Seraphine Zyra comp that my Graves just died instantly because he got bursted down. But for the most part, we should be relatively stable now. So I'm going to focus on leveling to 7. Getting in 4 Golden Ox so I can rebuild my econ nicely, and then we're just going to roll for the rest of the game for Jarvan 3 and Senna 3, and that's going to be our max cap. There's really not a reason to push levels. Like, you know, a lot of people get really like into it with the Golden Ox, and they think like, oh, you know, like I'll just play like 6 Golden Ox or something like that. I want to make it very clear, when you're trying to cap out this board, you often don't care too much about 6 Golden Ox. 4 Golden Ox is plenty enough. So like, you know, if you hit like a Viego and an Annie, you're not dropping any of the other units for Viego and Annie. Because 6 Golden Ox, while it gives you some extra damage amp, it's not really that much. It gives you extra loot. The point of 6 Golden Ox isn't to strengthen your board. As you can see, it's not that much of a big deal, right? The point of 6 Golden Ox is that if you hit it really early, you get insane amounts of components, and then with those extra loot components that you get, you can then cap your board really high by putting like multiple items on multiple units on multiple carries, and then you just become a demon, right? Like, imagine if I have items here, 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 items here. It's like, of course you're gonna win out, but like, you shouldn't be trying to hit 6 Golden Ox late game, because it does absolutely nothing if you're not cashing out the loot. Does that make sense? Right? If you're not cashing out components, it literally doesn't do anything, right? There's a big jump from 2 to 4, but like, you know, it's not that big of a deal to play 6 Golden Ox. So don't get too stressed about that. Even if you have a Golden Ox emblem, I would say that you're better off just playing your Divinicorp, Executioner, Slayer, you know, Senna, Jarvan, synergies, and not trying to fit in everything unless you hit it really early, right? Unless you hit it absolutely like, you know, breakneck speed that you're going to cash out, and that's going to be your new win con that you can then use that gold to itemize everybody, or use those items, excuse me, to itemize everybody. It's not something you necessarily have to worry about. So that's just to keep in mind here, but this is the board that we're going for. And then eventually, like I said, once I feel like my front line is stable enough, I'm going to start positioning my Graves to try and wrap my opponents and try and win that way. And that's going to be like my win condition. That's usually how you end up playing the comp. Another thing to note, I should also mention, Ornn artifacts are really powerful on Graves. There's quite a few of them that are like insanely strong. I'll pull up the stats just to like list them out and explain them a little bit. So this isn't something that happens in this game, but I do want to make this as comprehensive of a video as possible so you feel like it was worthwhile your time. Trying to make these VOD reviews a little bit more interesting and fun. But if you look at the items, there are so many of these that are insanely strong on Graves. So a lot of times if you get the option of an Ornn artifact, you can also go for Ornn artifacts. So Titanic Hydra, really strong. He just pumps out damage and it's just insane. I think also it's like I think there's some synergy. I know with Wit's End, there's like this broken synergy with the fact that he shoots 5 bullets, right? If you read Graves' ability, right, he shoots 5 bullets in place of his auto attacks. So with Wit's End's effect procs on each of those bullets, which I'm not sure if it's a bug that they're gonna fix or if it's intentional, but that's why Wit's End is like giga broken on him, because it becomes like healing plus like bonus damage on like all 5 of the bullets that he shoots, which is crazy. So it's actually crazy strong and it's insanely broken on him. Then you have stuff like Trenchcoat. Basically you put Trenchcoat on him, he dives the backline, he explodes into 3 pieces, and then he absolutely deletes and wraps the backline because he's already in the backline. So now you have 3 copies of him just deleting every backline carry in existence. It's insanely broken. And I'm not sure I think Titanic Hydra also has the same problem with the same effect as Wit's End, but either way it gives base stats, it gives health, it gives a lot of damage, so it also works really well on him. But then you also have the normal ones, right? Attack speed, mittens, that's really good on him. Death's Defiance, survivability, that's really good on him. Nashor's I think is I think this is just like because of you get it with the emblem, but it also has good synergy with him. Spectral Cutlass, just teleport to the backline and kill them instantly, sure, right? Even some of these ones like Infinity Force is not even that bad because it just gives them a lot of base stats. You can use it in place of some of the other items. It's just a little bit awkward because of survivability aspect. But I just want to point that out there, that he's like an artifact demon, that you have like literally like -1 placement, right? Like these are like insane numbers. Like if you see numbers this high, it means like giga broken, like giga broken. But that's just something to mention just to make it as comprehensive as possible. You'll see here that my Graves still has survivability issues. I'm getting a little bit stuck on frontline, and if units have heavy burst damage, he dies very easily. That's why you really want to hit Jarvan 3. If you can hit Jarvan 3, then your Graves has a lot more time to survive, right? You want to have a frontline unit 3-starred. That's like the max cap for this board, because if you don't have your frontline 3-starred, what ends up happening is your frontline dies and then your Graves gets aggro toggled, and then it just comes down to like a waiting game. Can your Graves hit the right unit in time, or will he die too soon? So here, as you can see, I'm experimenting. I'm trying to decide if I want to play double Graves to make the Graves wrap, or if I want to play double Jarvan to have a little bit of extra frontline. It's hard to say right now. Once I have Jarvan 3, there's a good chance that I'll always just play Jarvan 3 in the front line, and that will make sense. I'm also losing HP very fast. This is what I mean by this Graves comp. It looks really broken and it's really annoying, and I understand you can lose to it all the time, but especially if you don't have like, you know, really good survivability and you don't have like 3-star frontline. Especially here, I don't have 3 tank items on Jarvan because like I have these items and I made Last Whisper. I didn't get much defensive components. There's a lot of these fights where the Graves can just die instantly. Or not instantly, but die very fast, and then the board just collapses. Like it's all or nothing with this board until you hit Senna 3, Jarvan 3. Like those are the other carries, or ideally also Aphelios 2 you can find some stability there as well. So as you can see, I'm going to be rolling a little bit more deep, right? I'm dropping my econ a little bit. I'm going to be on level 7 for a while. I'm just trying to make sure that I hit these Golden Ox stacks to a point where my Graves is melting through the front line. I'm having a little bit of a problem right now where at least in this game, where Graves on certain fights isn't melting the front line as fast as I would like him to. And that's probably because I just don't have enough Golden Ox stacks yet. Remember what I said, 50 is the goal. Until I hit 50, things are going to be a little bit dicey. So we got to be careful about that. Look at my items here. I can actually make Bloodthirster for this Graves, which might help the survivability aspect a little bit. The extra health shield you get from Bloodthirster is often a little bit more important to me than getting like Executioner or anything else in, or having those Executioner Crit Glove synergies. So here, I think I was talking to chat. I'm kind of like AFK for a second. But I'm probably going to just make... I don't know. Maybe I don't make Bloodthirster here. I might just make items for... Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll just make Jarvan items. It's hard to say. I think Bloodthirster is really good on the Graves to give him survivability. But at the same time, I don't have Jarvan items. So I'd much rather have like 3 Jarvan items. This is a fight where I'm going to struggle, by the way. Right? I'm not going to chew through this Mundo before my Graves gets one-tapped. Like, do you see this Mundo? See how I'm stuck on the Mundo with the Graves? And then the Seraphine and the Zyra are probably going to one-tap this guy. Like, after the Sterix proc. So as you can see, I just narrowly lose to this guy again. It's just a really bad matchup. And this is what I was saying with Graves, right? And unless you have Jarvan 3, you fall off really hard. I expect to lose almost all of the fights on this stage 5 because I don't have Jarvan 3. I should have rolled for Golden Ox last turn. I didn't. Because now I'm just down 1 proc and I had enough gold to kind of get there. But like I said, it was probably because I was live and I was streaming. I'm looking at my own video. I'm seeing my face cam and I'm seeing that I'm talking to people anyways. So it's probably just that. But I'm going to slow roll a little bit. I expect to lose a lot of these fights, right? Especially with some of these burst damage boards that are just going to kill the Graves instantly. I'm hoping that the double Graves is going to compensate well enough that I should be able to like kill some units and stuff. And I'm going to try and just like grind up these Golden Ox stacks over the next couple of turns. And hopefully make it to a point where I can hit both of these 3-starred. Right? I don't want to send it to 0 this turn because I'm not close enough to either of them. If I can hit Senna 3 and Jarvan 3, then it's a first. Right? If I hit just one of them, it's a top 4. Right? And if I hit neither of them, there's a good chance I go bot 4. I know that sounds like doomer. It's like, what do you mean? How could that happen? Well, look, I lost to this guy, right? This guy's amp, he hit the Samira. We're in a bad spot there, right? I don't have 3 items here, right? Or here, so I don't have a secondary damage dealer, right? I'm trying to compensate by having 2 Graves here to like increase my damage a little bit. But it's going to be kind of rough. So as you can see, we're going to start dropping below. Remember I said rolled around 40? Well, we need to get these Golden Ox stacks up. Like, ideally 1 per turn. Get to 50 as soon as possible. That's like the, you know, quote-unquote magic number. But not really. But, you know, if you're following me there. I'm trying to figure out, like, what I should do. I'm looking at the matchups. Some of the matchups, I think I want more frontline. Like, especially in this one. Right? I just want Elise to, like, you know, I want to be able to, like, survive long enough to be able to dive this Elise without dying. So I'm trying to like figure out like, you know, which unit I'm using in my cloning facility on. My Graves didn't wrap the Elise. I was hoping that he would wrap here. That's just my bad. I think I just, you know, see, he walked. But what usually happens is you want the Graves to dash through the enemy before it dies, and then he can wrap the back line. But here he just took too much time to damage the T-Hex. So he dashed and dashed back, and then he walked over, and then he didn't dash to the Elise. But that's why I was trying to switch my cloning facility. It's like, if I have a little bit more front line, I could probably beat this guy. And if I can wrap and kill the Elise instantly, I can also probably beat that guy. But I just didn't get the wrap. That's probably my bad. I probably could have wrapped on the MF side instead, because the TX was just too hard for me to kill. But as you can see, look, we lost 1, 2, 3 rounds with the Graves 3. Some of it's a little bit positioning diff, but a lot of it is just the boards being a lot stronger. So it's just awkward. This is what I mean. If you don't have Jarvan 3, you don't have Senna 3, you just fall off really hard, right? It doesn't matter how good your spot looked. It doesn't matter how strong your board is from early game. Like, this Graves unit sometimes just doesn't fucking, like, you just don't make it, right? So I was beating everybody in the lobby. Like, I was destroying them for much of the game. But then, you know, you have a couple bad rounds, and all of a sudden, you're right back into the swing of, like, maybe losing. Now, of course, like I said, if I can hit Jarvan 3, which I'm not that far off of, right? I still have like 20-ish gold. I still have at least 1 more turn, right? I'm not going to get like 16-0'd or next turn or whatever. I can survive like a 7-unit loss here. I'm not going to get 8-0'd next turn. So, sorry, not 7-unit. I can survive a 5-unit loss here. So, like, I'm definitely going to be fine, right? I don't think I'm going to lose by more than 5 units. I'm once again fighting this board, which is really hard for me, because I can't kill this Mundo before these units just kill my Graves, as you can see. So, you know, it's awkward. This was also maybe a positioning diff, by the way. If we actually want to learn and improve a little bit, this is just like me playing poorly, right? I didn't position well for this guy. My Graves should be on this side, right? Now, he kind of has like anti-Graves tech, where he's trying to make it so that the Graves doesn't wrap. But this unit will die in 1 hit anyways, and then he'll probably target the Seraphine. What I should be doing is I should put Jarvan here, by the way, right? So that the Jarvan is getting targeted by all of these units. And then my Graves should be here, so he wraps the backline. I tried duplicating the Senna in these fights. I think it's kind of a throw, but I think I was just too slow. just because I was like, I'm out of it. I was streaming. Probably this was the last game on the day when I was streaming, so it is what it is. But Jarvan should be here. Graves should be right behind him. Graves ideally would kill this, wrap, kill this, wrap, kill this, and then maybe kill the Zyra before he dies. And if that happens, I would win this fight. So this is just poor positioning from me. I'm basically on the wrong side, trying to wrap this way, but there's nobody here to wrap. So instead, my Graves just ends up in the middle of the board, right? One of these units that got targeted earlier dies, right? My Jarvan's still alive, but the board was targeting the wrong unit, and then they just all target down my board, and I just die. So this was like, my bad. Like, I'm not going to die here because, like, like I said, I'm not going to lose by like 5 units because my board is still relatively strong. But this was a round that I could have easily won. So that's a me mistake. That's an execution mistake. So don't worry too much. Think of me as having like 16 HP. I don't think it was that big of an execution mistake on the other 2 fights. But now I'm just going to roll for Jarvan. We hit the Jarvan 3. This is the part where you probably win out, right? This is what I was saying before. If you have Jarvan 3 and you have Senna 3, chances are you're going to win out. So now I have Jarvan 3. This is fantastic. The whole game, this is all I wanted, was to have a duplicate Jarvan in my front line, because more front line is going to equate to being really strong in a lot of these matchups. It makes it a little bit awkward because my Jarvan's not taking the brunt of the damage, but this duplicate Jarvan is going to be tanky enough that I can usually get a wrap off. So now I feel pretty confident, right? Jarvan 3, Senna 3, I should be relatively strong. I wrap on the correct side here. You don't really care about killing the Samira first. Killing this Annie makes it so that you don't have to deal with all those Tibbers anymore. And I can, like, the Samira can't 1v9. So you could just, like, kill the Samira after, especially with Edge of Night. So, killed the Am player. That's good. We hit 50, by the way. This is where I was saying, like, we're right around that critical mass area. This actually is a win out from here on, right? This is the part where Graves becomes broken again, right? You need to hit Jarvan 3, you need to hit Senna 3, and you need to hit Graves, right? I greeted my goal as much as possible. I tried my best to make sure to balance getting the Golden Ox while also being able to hit all of these 3 stars, right? If I rolled more aggressively for Golden Ox, I probably wouldn't have had enough gold to hit the Jarvans. I tried to delay it as long as possible, right? Till my last dying breath, I waited to roll for the Jarvan and the Senna just to make sure that I can hit them, right? There's not really much other options there. And now here, hopefully I can fix up my items a bit. I see a Bloodthirster. I'm going to take the Bloodthirster at this point. Right, I have 3 items on Jarvan. The Senna items are chalked anyways, right? The carousel was really bad. It was like an all tier or rod carousel, so it was all AP items. So I have this stupid Gunblade on her anyways. She's not pumping out that much damage. I'm going to level straight to level 8. I don't care too much about the Golden Ox proc this turn, but I'll try my best to get it if I can. But I just want... I could actually get it, right? 28, I need 24, 24, 12. So I should roll here. I should roll to get this 52 because I pumped the level anyways. So this is a big mistake if I don't roll for Golden Ox here. But either way, Senna, Jarvan duplicated. I put the Bloodthirster on the Graves just to give him more survivability. I really don't care about the extra crit chance with the Hodge. It doesn't matter. Trust me, it's fine. The extra health shield that you get with the BT is going to be more important. I also, like, if I can wrap this side, it's nice because obviously I can kill the Aphelios and the Xayah. But if I don't wrap that side, that's also fine because there's a chance that the Xayah actually just one-taps me, which is really scary. But anyways, we beat this guy. That's great. We're going to be trying to avidly position in a way like this with these 2 units to try and get the Graves to wrap and kill this backline unit. But as you can see, I messed up last turn. I didn't roll for my 52 Golden Ox. I rolled for this turn. So it's a little bit inefficient on the gold because I basically just wasted a bunch. I could have maybe got another Golden Ox proc this game. So that was a mistake last turn. But understandably, I think I was a little bit stressed being 3 HP. We converted into a top 4, right? But very narrowly, right? This was like, we just got the plane turned around from crash landing, hitting the units. Here, I think I have enough damage to kill this T-Hex now, even though it's scaled up a bit. So I'm still trying to wrap this Elise, because I think Elise, left unchecked, can do nasty things to the board. I still don't get the wrap off, which is fine. But I should be critical mass, right? Even if they're not good items, 3 items on Senna is 3 items on Senna. So, like, look, my Graves died. This is why you need the Senna 3 as well. Because without, like, if you don't have Senna 3, you need Aphelios with Aphelios items, right? I don't have Aphelios items. I don't have a Guinsoo. I don't have good items for him. But you need one of the 2 to kind of clutch up after the Graves dies. The Graves alone is not going to be enough in a lot of these boards. So you need Jarvan that's just going to be unkillable, 3-star Jarvan. He also can pump out an insane amount of damage depending on what items you put on him. Like if you give him a Sterix, he can also pump out. But then you also need one of these 2 units to clutch up, right? Ideally, it's Aphelios. Aphelios benefits from the Golden Ox proc, so he gets like a lot of value. But, you know, in this case, I don't really have Aphelios items. I just put the items on Senna. I think it's a little bit more effective. She can just do more consistent pumping. Here I'm in a position on this side. The only unit I'm really scared of, like, I know it sounds really weird. I would like to wrap this side, but it's going to be really hard to wrap this side because this guy's always positioning his Leona in this way. I'd rather just get my Graves on the back line here. Like, I know it seems kind of weird, but it's just not worth it for me to be targeting this side, because if I'm on this side and I don't wrap, this Xayah is going to one-tap the Graves, straight up. It doesn't matter how much healing you have. When you're playing these type of boards, this Xayah is just known to one-tap. So it's just rough. But anyways, we beat that guy. It's a first, right? It was very narrowly not a first. This is why I always say, when you're playing one of these reroll comps, always play it from a good spot. As broken as the comp is, as strong as the comp is, I always say it like, you know, like if you're more of a beginner player, not super experienced with the comp, you're not super experienced on what makes it work, what makes it tick, why it ticks the way it ticks, be really careful, because like, as you can see, that was a game where I very narrowly went bot 4. I turned around with like 1 extra HP, and of course you can chalk it down to me making mistakes and stuff here. I pointed them out. I tried my best to point out some. I'm sure there's more mistakes that I didn't point out, but just gotta be careful, right? So just know your priorities, know your item priorities, know which ones you're going for first. Make sure to always balance your gold with your Golden Ox, right? You want to reach 50 stacks for Golden Ox, but you also want to be able to hit your Jarvan 3, Graves 3, Senna 3. A lot of times it's not even worth pushing levels. You just want the stability of the 3-star front line, 3-star back line is going to help you. Like I said, if you have really good Aphelios items, then you can maybe disregard Senna items and put them on Aphelios. So that's like, you know, your Gwynsu, Kraken Slayer type build, and then Aphelios can pump out some damage there as well. There's also other options, like you can also go for like Kayn 3 in certain matchups or certain situations. And Alistar 3 is pretty inexpensive that can help beef up your front line a little bit. But in general, that's like the idea for the comp and the guide. Hopefully that made sense. Hopefully it was enjoyable, and hopefully you learned something if you haven't played this comp before. I'm sure it's very popular at all levels of gameplay, so you know, you might be watching this and being like, well, this is a little bit like, you know, passe, but I think it's still relevant because obviously I didn't do a guide on it already. So thanks for watching. Have a great day and see ya. Bye bye.